So, hello and welcome to the 1% podcast. Today we have Steve Wilson on. Now, myself and Steve have been working together for the last couple of months. And actually, me and Steve actually first spoke nearly 2 years back, but a bit of a hiatus between when we first spoke and Steve decided to sort of move forward to work together. I want to bring Steve on to talk because his story is great, from where he was to where he is today. And I think a lot of what he's got to say will resonate with a lot of people here, which is that kind of, it's all sort of good on paper. Life's pretty decent, but there's a fair few areas where I'm not quite being where I want to be. And when we peel back the onion a little bit and look underneath, doing a little bit of work on those areas has quite an outsized effect. But I want Steve to say that, not me, because it's more important. Before we jump off, Steve, do you want to just introduce yourself, who you are, what a bit like you, what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for having me on, Luke. Steve Wilson. So I'm IT director for a real estate business. So busy job, lots going on. Where I'm probably a bit different to some of your guys, Luke, is that I'm single, I'm divorced, which is fine. I'm quite happily single, actually, too happily single at the minute. Love my own company at the moment. But I've got two teenage sons who I have loads to do with, but great relationship. I suppose what I'm saying is I do have a little bit more freedom than some of the guys that you're speaking to. So probably less excuses in many ways, but then, life is still extremely busy, Monday to Friday is crazy. And then when I have the kids at the weekend, it's all encompassing. So still those challenges of time and finding ways to get things in, just slightly different.
Totally. And I think with that one, we've discussed this both in the programs and just generally, haven't we, where we're like, some of the gents I work with, the kids might be younger or they're obviously living with the partners. And so there's at home is a bit more visceral from a time perspective. But those same issues are still there, right? And the same things that hold us back are still there. And I think when we'll talk about this in a second with you, Steve, you're a bit like, well, I kind of know I haven't got some of those things, so why am I not doing what I need to be doing, right? And it's almost more frustrating in a way. But also that's why it's a really cool conversation because it's slightly different. But I think what it points to is it's the same stuff, right? No matter what, and that's I think that's what's helpful for anyone listening. That being said, let's jump off and rewind. So we spoke more recently, a couple of months back. You reached back out and said, "Look, Luke, want to have a chat? I want to do a bit of work." But we actually spoke. I think it was 2.5-2-ish years ago. You'd seen my content for a bit. We had a conversation. You were like, and you weren't feeling your best, but you were like, right then, actually, now isn't the right time. You weren't sure, right? So you jump off wherever you want to jump off, but like, what was going on for you back then, and I guess more recently, to make you go, right, let's do something. I want to make some changes.
Yeah. So look, I'm nearly 49, right? And I've had a history of being in decent shape. I've had a running spell, if you like, and done multiple marathons. I switched to triathlons. I've been in decent shape from a gym perspective. I went on a mad diet when I turned 40 and got in really good shape, to be honest with you. And that was using a little bit of a PT, but not much. Most of it was done on my own back, I suppose. So in theory, I'm definitely in that camp of I know what I need to do, but I wasn't fully understanding why I wasn't doing it. And I think I was giving myself a bit of an easy time sometimes. The world's changed. I don't need to be doing all that anymore. But then because I'm not doing that anymore, obviously things go to pot. It physically didn't look how I wanted to look, didn't feel fit and active like I used to. That then dents your confidence. And I don't think I fully realized how much that was affecting me. It can affect you then at work. It can affect you out in the wilder world in relationships. When I reached out to you 2 years ago, I was getting frustrated and I was like, I need to do something. But when I first spoke to you, and I've been honest with you about this in the past, I thought you was taking sort of middle-aged, fat old men that had never touched a gym in their life and giving them a step target and telling them to do some push-ups in the house. And I was like, right, I don't need that because I've got all these other things that I know how to do. I know how to run a marathon. Yeah. I know how to train for a triathlon. I know how to cut some carbs and lose some weight. But why wasn't I doing it? And then probably to layer on top of that as well a little bit, it is things that used to work for me in the past wasn't working anymore. Even in my 40s, I could slightly tweak my diet and I would drop a bit of weight and it just wasn't happening anymore, And the issue I've got then is I'm very much all or nothing. Yeah. I've had some of the best Januaries ever where I've literally thrown every trick in the book at getting things back on track. It's a massive shock to the system. It's unsustainable. The first bit of, I used to travel a lot in my old job. So the first trip abroad, in late Jan, early February. The first little bit of cold that you get in the season, it's all out the window, and it's too much to do. And I didn't have a version of, right, well, let's just get some of the basics done and let's stay on track. And that's where I realized over time, through watching you, following you on LinkedIn, these podcasts has been really useful. Realizing there's a lot of people in my situation, actually, and it's not all those guys that know nothing, that's starting from zero. There's a lot of people, that are in my position. So I reached back out, and it's been the best thing I've ever done. Really start to move the dial now.
Yeah, and thanks for being honest with that as well, because it's what you're describing there actually is a common narrative, maybe slightly different to what people might think, but that whole, well, I kind of know what I need to do, and it should be pretty basic and fundamental. And so, what do I need to be told? Right? Surely I ought to be able to do it myself. And I think a lot of it comes to that. What you said there, Steve, is the all or nothing kind of perfectionist. And especially if you've done some pretty cool stuff in the past, like ultras, triathlons, marathons, and this is the physical side of things. But it's like, well, if I know how to do that, well, actually, why do I need help looking at this stuff? And if some bloke's just going to say, oh yeah, let's get a few steps in, do some basic stuff in the morning, what has that got to do with in comparison to a marathon? Surely that doesn't have an impact. I guess the trick that's missed there, and I speak to a lot of guys who have historically, maybe they've been rugby or they've had some kind of sporting thing which they've been into, and it's drifted as they get to 40, pushing 50, kids, business, life, the usual stuff, and then struggling to get some traction on both the physical stuff, but then also that then has an impact, like you said, on your mindset, headspace, presence, procrastination at work, and all these other things. And so it's like, well, what's going on? But also recognizing it's not the only thing, but the physical component is a core pillar to feeling better. And I think the rub there is that the modalities that we've used historically for ourselves are quite intense, all or nothing. Like you're training for a marathon, there's a lot of fucking training, or whatever it is. But then it doesn't really encompass anything else. And it also doesn't realize the impact of small compounding behaviors over time. And those small compounding behaviors over time, if they're just sitting in the background, that goes a long way to looking after you mentally, physically, emotionally. And I think sometimes we can't see that. And I say your ego, I don't mean you specifically, Steve, I mean one's ego. But often that can sort of blind you to actually what's really possible. And it's not to say we don't want to do cool stuff like triathlons, marathons, having these cool, physical feats. But I don't believe we want to use those as the vehicle for keeping us healthy, happy, and content, because it's quite a fragile place to operate from, and it requires that all or nothing mindset, right?
Yeah, and I'll tell you the issue I've had historically with those kind of things. It's been fantastic, and I'm so glad I've got them, and I've got the medals hung on the wall and stuff like that. And but they're all encompassing, So I probably, looking back, and it's a few years since I did it, probably work suffered, because I was thinking about my next run. Probably my relationships with the kids suffered a little bit. I'd look at the calendar and go, oh, I've got the kids this weekend. Am I going to get a long run in? And maybe a little bit of like resentment over time there.
Yeah.
I've had little relationships in the past over the last few years, and that gets in the way, like, oh, I need to go for a run tonight, right? I can't go and see that person. So yeah, that all or nothing just doesn't work when you're busy and you've got other things. And then the flip side of that is, and I've heard lots of people talk about this, is when the event's done, it's almost like drops and off, the curve ramps and ramps and ramps, especially something like marathon. And it's like, oh, right, now what? I've got nothing to do. And you can fall into a bit of a slump there if you're not careful. So this is more sustainable, what we're doing together now.
And you've had the high from doing the marathon, and it's great. But again, it's just one key area of your life, and your life is multifaceted, and there's more going on. And what we're going to speak about in a second, I think, Steve, is what you're alluding to, is the having a framework of behaviours that can serve you to look good, feel good, show up, be present, all that good stuff, work better. Just have it just in the background, taking care of you. That means that you don't have these huge oscillations between being healthy, being fit, being happy, being not, whatever it is, being stressed, being not. You've got some standards for yourself which allow you to look after yourself kind of consistently. Now, if you want to chuck a marathon on top of that, or a triathlon, or insert crazy physical feat, fucking go for it. Great.
Yeah.
That isn't the thing that's predicating whether you're healthy or happy or not. You know what I mean? I think that's important.
That's it. That's really important. And I think it's then, especially when you've had the slumps that I've had over the recent years, where you're just not doing what you used to do. You know, I kind of almost define myself as a fit and active, you know, a runner or whatever. And suddenly when that identity slips, it's like, well, who am I then? You know, and I've even got friends who have said, well, you know, they see me as that as well. They're like, well, why do you need help with this kind of stuff? You know what you're doing, don't you? And it's like, yeah, but I'm not doing it. And
And I think
and
that
and
that
and we
one
have to find that balance.
and that one we spoke about this, and I spoke about this on other podcasts and with the guys, you know, Steve, is you've got an identity of who you are, but you know you're not doing the things that live up to that identity, but no one else sees that. And so you get this really sort of icky, like, well, outwardly it looks great, but inwardly I feel pretty shit. And it's because you've got these standards for yourself that aren't being met. And like, I'm a healthy runner and I do X, Y, and Z. Yeah, but I'm not doing any of the things that are related to that. Even if my mates and everyone tells me I know I'm not. Likewise at work, you or the royal you, like, well, you know, you're doing a great job outwardly. Yeah, but I'm a bit unproductive and I'm not as focused as I could be, and I maybe procrastinate a bit. But outwardly it's going well, but you know you're doing that. And I think it's when we have those kind of rubs in life, that's when it doesn't feel great. When we can start to align that, which is what we've done, and we'll speak about that in a second. Not that life's perfect, but all of a sudden I think confidence, headspace, physicality all starts to feel better because we're kind of, I know it sounds a bit wanky in new age, but we're living in alignment with who we want to be. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. One of the phrases that you, and look, this is probably what got me to work with you, is you said, and I might butcher it, but something about it's the promises that you're breaking to yourself that
Yeah.
matter. You know, so if I said I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. and I don't get up at 6 a.m. and I can't do all the morning stuff that I want to do, you know, no one knows that. You know, I still get to work on time. I still show up. I still do what I need to do, but I know I've missed that. And I know I've not done the things I want to do in the morning. You know, I might write a really great report for work, but I know I've procrastinated over it, left it till the last minute, maybe worked all weekend on it. The end result's great, but I've made it hard for myself, and I know I have. And I know, you know, there's probably what I could have done something a little bit better on that to increase my confidence level in that. And sometimes, I think I used this analogy with you when we first spoke, some areas of life, and some of it's physical, some of it's nutritional, you know, like sort of eating crap all weekend or whatever, when I'm trying to lose weight, it almost felt like I was running with a parachute on my back on purpose. It's like, why am I making this so hard for
Yeah.
myself? And yeah, it's difficult unpicking some of that stuff, isn't it? But yeah,
That analogy you gave there, I've actually used that a few times now because I really like it because you can just visualize exactly what it means, right? And actually, in some forms of running, you do it on purpose. You put a little parachute on your back to slow yourself down to make it harder, right? But that's
yeah,
to get better. Most of the time in life, we don't want to make things harder than they need to be. And like the examples you gave there, it's beautiful. It's like with all of that stuff, I mean, especially the work piece, the output's the same, right? You know, you're
yeah,
going to a good report, but like how he got there wasn't ideal or optimal, and you know it wasn't. And that's the bit. It's the key bit here is that you know that there's a way to do this and a way for you to behave that is better and a standard for yourself. And when we don't keep that, those commitments or promises to yourself that you don't miss, no one sees those, but you do. And for me, I think for your one self-esteem, it's like Chinese water torture because you just telling yourself, "Oh, I don't do what I say, I don't practice what I preach." And so, although the output might look good enough, you sort of know that really to get there, there's been a bit of blagging it, and that doesn't feel great for yourself, right?
yeah. Exactly, exactly. And look, we've talked about this before, but there's a good synergy with it. I felt I was really bad and lacked confidence at public speaking. I'm having to do a little bit more of it at work and actually want to do more of it. And I've joined a public speaking club. And the thing is, really, I'm not that bad at it, and I get quite a lot of praise. Really, it's just about showing yourself you can do it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you can't force confidence. You've got to prove to yourself and show yourself that you can do it. And the confidence builds. And what this speaking club's done is allowed me multiple times to speak and refine and get better and come away thinking, actually, I'm all right at this. So when I have to do it in the real world, I feel better about it. And it's no different to showing yourself that you can get up early and tick all these boxes.
Like Ryan Holiday, I'm going to butcher the quote. It's something along the lines of like affirmations and talking about it's great, but give yourself evidence. I think that's it. So
Yeah.
it's like show yourself,
Yeah.
say, and that can be as simple as getting up and making your bed. Do you know what I mean? Like it doesn't have to be, but like if you're layering what you do, so like if you're worried about being a public speaker, how do you get better at it? Do more public speaking.
Yeah.
And then you get to a point where you've done it a few times. You go, oh, maybe I'm not so bad at this, and maybe it's not. You know, it's the same thing. Like for me with the podcast, before I started this, I really want a podcast. So I should do a podcast. Well, they're talking about doing a podcast. What do you need to do to start a podcast? Start a podcast.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And back on the public speaking, then it was like saying yes to opportunities that I would have previously been scared to death of, and still was. But suddenly, and it's funny how the world works, isn't it? You start thinking about it, suddenly an email lands saying, "Oh, there's a conference. Would you like?"
Yeah,
to
you're like, oh, I can do that.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. No,
Well,
it's exactly that.
well, let's kind of, and we've started to do this anyway in the conversation, Steve, but let's sort of fast forward a little bit then to today. We've framed about where you were, and now we've been doing some work for the last couple of months, and for transparency, you're still in the process, and we're still continuing to do that, which is great. What's been your key learnings then and takeaways having come through this? I think firstly, maybe realise it's not just for fat blokes doing push-ups, right? There's more going on than just that. But what have you learned, and what have been your takeaways so far from the work that we've done?
What, aside from that, I must train legs going forward.
Yeah, well, yeah, you've got to train legs as well. There's that too, yeah.
Look, I think back to the beginning, it's those little habits. When I look back now to, when you gave me the goals to start with and getting the steps in and some of the basic workouts at home, that actually were far more difficult than I thought they would be anyway.
Yeah.
Even though I'm at the gym regularly, actually some of the HIIT stuff's a bit more difficult anyway. But I think the accountability is a great thing, especially with the group coaching calls and the WhatsApp groups that we've got going. There's some great guys in there and some great, you can bounce off those and learn from others as well. But it's just having those foundations and being able to build on them. And then when you've got a busy day, and I've had a busy week this week, you can still just get the basics in. You might not smash it out the park and get 6 workouts in and a run and whatever that might look like. You might have some late nights and you might have to have some compromised mornings, but it's knowing what the basic frameworks, should look like so that at least you're not feeling crap or, diet starts Monday. Great example current is, I was on holiday the previous week in Barbados, had a lovely week. We've done a bit of a routine lately of having a November holiday, a bit of winter sun, really nice. But I typically get back and December's a write-off. Diet starts January, exercise starts that January.
Yeah.
I might tick over a little bit, but other than that, lots of booze, lots of food. And you wonder why you feel crap in January, don't you?
Yeah.
I've come back. It has been a challenging week this week, so I've been busy, but I've ticked a lot of the basic boxes. And I'll be ramping it up over the weekend and next week. And I'll be finishing the year really strong. And I'm really determined to keep some of that ticking over Christmas as well. I've got a 2-week break over Christmas. There's no reason to go absolutely feral, like you say, and eat and drink everything in sight just because that's what you think's the dumb thing. And then you're starting in a bad place in January then, So, yeah, it's those basic steps, I think, that I've really benefited from.
Yeah. And I think that the reality is, I mean, I say this a lot, I probably work in an echo chamber, but I do think there's lots of men out there not as happy and content and healthy as they would like to be, especially at the kind of age that we're at, 40 plus. And I think a lot of it stems from not having a few fundamental standards and habits and behaviors for yourself. And the trope of like, I know what I need to do, because everyone, for example, when you've got little kids, right? Let's say someone's not sleeping very well, and I'll go, well, let's have a look at your evening, and play on the phone until midnight, and drinking and eating shit, whatever. So, would you let your kid play on your 4-year-old play on their iPhone until midnight? No. What do you do to your 4-year-old? Oh, well, we probably run around a bit, in the evening, then they have a shower, get to bed. I read to them, and they get to sleep. Okay. And so, what do we need to do? and it sounds really obvious and trite, and I'm not saying that to like almost belittle whoever's in that scenario, but we're often blind to the fundamental basics. And then I'll hear that same person go, I know what I need to do.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't, or maybe you just can't quite see what's holding you back. And I think that's then what speaks to that. We need some habits and behaviors and standards, because a lady on there, there's a video I just did recently, and it's like a bit of a jokey meme thing, and it says me time, right? And at the top, it's got me time, and it's like me eating Nutella at 10 at night, drinking some wine at like 11 o'clock at night, scrolling at midnight, and then it's got me time underneath, like doing a stretch first thing in the morning, meditating, then jumping in the ice bath, right? And it's like saying, what me time do you want? And some ladies posted at the bottom and gone the other day. She was like, along the lines of, what's stopping you? Just I can still get up at 5:30 in the morning and eat Nutella and have wine. I was like, of course you can. Like, that's what you want to do. But like, is that going to help you, right? And so it's more about saying that you can have anything you want. You can do that stuff, and there's no judgment from me. If you want to eat Nutella and drink wine at 10, 11 o'clock at night, fill your boots, but don't think it's not going to have an impact. And I think then it's your choice as to, well, do I want that? And you can have that, but that will impact you next day. And I think often we get stuck and we can't necessarily see some of these things that we do that hold us back. And yes, the solutions are pretty small. And like you said, they're not big or scary, but like we can often get trapped in a situation where we can't really see the wood for the trees in order to sort of change what's not working. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And look, I've not been a huge drinker, but it was more regular, like, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I used to tell myself, oh, finishing the weekend off Sunday, a couple of beers and a takeaway. Well, yeah, that's lovely, isn't it? But then you feel like crap on a Monday, and that's not how to start a week, is it?
No.
And then before you know, and a diet ends up consisting of probably Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday on track, and then you've gone
and
again.
you're on that loop again. And again, with none of this, none of it's said with judgment or like the way I see it. People can do whatever the fuck they want with their life. It's your life, right?
Yeah.
But if you're complaining that you're knackered, tired, a bit depressed on a Monday, well, why? Well, and then you say, okay, well, I had a few cans of the takeaway on a Sunday night, I had an exercise. Well, there's your answer. Now, whether you want to do something about that, that's different. And again, fine. If you're happy doing that and it's not having an impact, crack on. But a lot of the people I speak to, it is. And so it's like, well, here's another way we could try it. And it doesn't have to be like that every day either. But it's just like saying, if I want to feel fresher most of the time, there's a compromise, or I need to look objectively at what I'm doing and going, if I do that, that will happen. And I think just being empowered to make that decision. I think what you're speaking about here, Steve, with the habits and the behaviors and how you're feeling is like, well, I'm starting to align more of this stuff with where I want to be. Doesn't mean I want to be a monk or want to live like 24/7. Like, I will relax and indulge over Christmas, but it doesn't have to be all or nothing, like we were saying at the start, right?
Yeah. And look, on the alcohol piece, I definitely wasn't, a big drinker. But you start to realise the damage it's doing, and I've not stopping by all means. I drank on holiday, drink over Christmas. But one thing that made me make a change, I saw a video on LinkedIn, and it was this guy, and he called them middle lane drinkers. They're not teetotals, they're not alcoholics, but they drink probably too much. But then they throw everything at it to compensate.
Yeah.
So it's the guy that drinks all week, but then does an ice bath and gets up early and does a bit of a run, but they don't quite compensate for the fact that you just again, it's like the parachute on the back, right?
100%.
I want to run a good week next week. I'll tell you what, I'll have some beer and a takeaway Sunday night. Right, that's the parachute on the back, isn't it? You're making it hard for yourself. You're not giving yourself the best chance and clearing the way for a good run at it.
And if you want that, I would say, well, maybe have the beer and the takeaway on the Friday night, and you relax a bit over the weekend. It's a bit stuff, and then have a nice fresh Sunday. And so there's nothing wrong with that bit that if you want that, and you're maybe a bit fuzzier. But why have the fuzzy head and feel a bit wonky like on a Monday when you want to go after your week versus then? I think it's just being more conscious around what we do and then being able to make the choice objectively, right? And if you're having a beer and takeaway every night, that's probably a conversation we need to have, because that's probably going to be really good.
And again, I think age plays a part. You don't recover as well from it. It definitely affects sleep more. But what I realised is, I've still got a lot to go at in life generally, career and ambitions and things I want to do and achieve. And it was, reaching out to you, there was a clear moment of, I use the phrase, what's got you here won't get you there. What's worked in the past isn't working anymore. And we need different ways of looking at things and coping with things. And that's definitely what I've got out of this program.
Yeah, I would firmly believe that. And it's true, like what you get away with when you're 20s and your 30s is different from what you can do now. But also, it's not, I think people say it's an age thing. And technically it is because you are older. But I don't really think for most of us it's because you are biologically older. It's because your life and circumstances are much, much different, and your responsibilities are much different compared to when you're 20. And so therefore, that impacts your ability of what you can do and how you can do it. And that's okay. So it's about going, well, okay, like you said, well, life does look different. It doesn't mean I can't do these things. It just means I need to look at things a little bit differently and change it. And I think once you recognize that, you realize I can feel fucking great.
Yeah.
It just needs to be a bit different, and that's okay,
Yeah.
And it's also liberating because you go, I don't have to sort of wallow in this, middle lane, not just drinking anything, right? I want to feel and look my best, and it doesn't. But I don't have to sacrifice time and everything else, I might have to make a few compromises, like we're discussing about the Nutella and wine on in the evening.
Yeah, yeah,
But for me, that's a compromise I'm willing to make so I can feel better elsewhere. If someone isn't, fine, crack on.
yeah.
Like, there's no
Absolutely.
judgment.
Absolutely. And I think the other key thing you said, and I love the analogy, and I've used it since, and this definitely was me. Your theory about if you get a puncture, you don't jump out of the car and stab all the other four tires and say, right,
Yeah.
that's it, we can't go anywhere. That was definitely me. I'd set off on a diet on a Monday. There'd be something, let's say, on a Tuesday or a Wednesday that derailed it, whether it was work or whatever that might be, something social where I'd eat something bad, and I'd be like, right, might as well get fish and chips on Thursday now, and we'll start on Monday. Well, and before you know it, you're living almost like you can be living a 4-day weekend up from a diet perspective,
Yeah.
certainly, sometimes an alcohol perspective, and it doesn't need to be that way at all. You can have a bad day, you can have a bad meal, and get back on track and compensate.
We can have a bad minute.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Even with your kid, so it's different. But like, say with kids, for example, and like, I know your lads are a bit older, but there's lots of ways with younger kids as well. And I'm sure actually older kids are still challenging too, right?
Oh yeah, they are. Yeah,
But just in a different way.
yeah.
But like, there'll be lots of chat in the group, especially the collective as well, because we opened up the net more about what we talk about. But they'll be like, oh, well, I came home and I wasn't great with the kids, and I was like, well, that's fine. But you've got an opportunity 5 minutes later to correct that if you want to. You can wallow in it and make it worse and drag it out, or you go, hold up, I didn't shower myself in glory then, and I'm going to go and correct this right away. But the same applies to your diet or anything else. And I think just being able to cut yourself some slack, go, okay, I fucked up there, or that went wrong, or whatever it is, right? Well, what do we do? It doesn't have to be tomorrow, next week, whatever. It can be right this second. You can go, you had an altercation with your missus. That was me, right? Tail between your legs. Sorry, not sorry, but sorry. On we go. And I'm just using those as examples because it kind of, I think once you start or one starts to build that sort of mindset, it makes life a little bit easier because you can go, okay, well, I'm not perfect. I'm going to fuck up, guaranteed. But then if I do, what do I do about it? And it doesn't have to drag out. I don't have to metaphorically stab my tires. I can course correct in the moment. Now, I don't want this to sound like I'm some perfect guy who's constantly just walking through Zen as anything. No, I fuck up all the time and I don't. And I double down and get things wrong. We all do. But the more we can be aware of this stuff and not sort of metaphorically stab the tires or put the parachute on, I think the better we feel. But I think that's also predicated on day to day feeling better about yourself, which is then predicated on those behaviors and those other things that sit underneath, right? So it's kind of all layers up.
Yeah. And look, some of the stuff you've touched on there, it's not just the physical, is it? It's not just the diet. Your program's got a lot of mindset stuff in there, and that works really well. As I've talked to a lot about this. I was already kind of going for a walk and doing a voice memo, and now I've included like gratitude in that, and that's an amazing time to do it when you're out walking, especially, it's not great when it's pitch black, is it? But if you can do it in the daylight and you're in the countryside and things like that. But yeah, just clearing your head and have given yourself a bit of time to process what's going on and potentially writing it down or getting it out in whatever shape or form helps you in those scenarios and those situations, helps you react to the kids or the work situation a bit better, and just makes you a bit more grounded. Definitely benefited from some of that stuff.
Yeah. And I totally agree. I think part of that kind of stuff, it's just all of it really is, I believe, just being a bit more conscious and intentional about your behavior, how you show up and how you act, right? And if we can just be a little bit more objective, not be totally reactive, I think both with ourselves and our habits and how we take care of ourselves, but then also in how we interact and think about the world, like generally we feel better and a bit more balanced, right? And who wouldn't want all that?
Yeah, exactly.
Steve, it's been a pleasure chatting, mate. I don't want to take up too much of your time because we already spoke for a while and we both can talk, and I'd love to talk for another hour. If anyone was sitting listening to this, maybe they're in a similar spot to where you were, when we first spoke, or even a couple of years back even, thinking like, I'm all right, I sort of need to do something, but do I really? Is it all right? What would you say to someone in that kind of headspace? And whether it's to consider working with me or not doesn't really matter, but like just, how you were feeling, right? What would you say to someone then? Like, what would you say to yourself back then?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, whether it's you or someone else, what I definitely did is I reached a wall where I thought I need to work with someone. I think the accountability side of it, if nothing else, brings, it works wonders and brings a lot. But yeah, I think as men, we're not very good at that. We think we can fix everything and solve everything. And some, there's the physical, but there's the mental as well. And there's a huge mental health crisis going on at the minute. And it's really just stopping, taking check of where you are and reaching out for help. And I think it's invaluable. I think everybody should have some kind of coach, and look, not everybody can maybe afford it, and there's different ways and shapes and forms, but yeah, working with you and not, the one thing that your program brings is all the other guys as well. You get as much out of that as you do, with the one-on-one stuff and the things that you set. So I think if anybody's struggling, I think reach out. There's all kinds of different ways and means of getting help, but you don't have to do some of this stuff alone. And if that kind of sounds a little bit deep, but even just getting in shape, even just getting top of your diet, where you just can't do it. I know a lot of guys at our age, and I was suffering from this. You get to the point where you go on holiday, you put a bit of weight on, and it doesn't come back off, and then you go on your next holiday and you put even more weight on, and then you have Christmas, and sometimes it's just reaching out for help to get a grip on stuff like that.
Well, of course, I'd agree. I'm a coach, right? So I'm biased and I've got skin in the game. But I would agree with what you say, because we don't always know what we're doing, and sometimes we need to have a bit of a fresh perspective. And of course, I've got a program. You can message me and we can talk about that. But equally, you can get that elsewhere. But I think the other part is recognizing, if you think you got a problem, you're not feeling great. You've got a problem and you're not feeling great, and we can sugarcoat it, but I don't think anyone wants to be stuck in that. It's all right, or we don't want to, settle for mediocrity. And I think if you've got those thoughts, you've got the thoughts. And I think sometimes we can almost go, yeah, it can't be that bad. But like, do you want life to be not that bad? Like, and so I think, and even if that's where you're at, it's like, well, that for me, that's just a highlight. Well, I need to do something, and whether it's to work with a coach or have a look at what you're doing. But if something's not working, try and have a look more objectively as to what it is. Well, actually, I'm overweight and I'm pissed off about that. Well, that's the first step. Address that. Or actually, I'm just constantly stressed. Right, well, let's address that. Oh, I'm just knackered all the time. Okay, well, there we go. There's something you can look at. And so, and once you shine a light on it, you can do something about it. But if you don't look at it or change it or even admit that something's not working, you're going to be stuck, right?
And that's it. And look, we've all got goals and ambitions and where we want to be, and that can be frustrating if you're not achieving those. But if you're not getting the basics right, you're never going to take yourself to the next level, are you? So if you want to level up, you've got to get some solid foundations to level up from.
Exactly.
And that's some of the frustrations I had with myself, thinking, yeah, I could do some of this, whether it's work, personal, whatever that might look like, physical. But I'm not even got the basics right now. So how can I even think about that goal when I can't get the basics done? So
That's it.
It's hugely important. People need
and then
to
once you've got the basics and the foundations in, as Delbo said, the world's your lobster, right?
Absolutely.
Everything stems from there. Look, Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure talking. Thank you for taking the time, mate. I've really enjoyed our chat, and I know anyone listening will do too. If anyone is listening and they're interested in having a chat with me about how I can help, like we've done with Steve, please drop me a message or whack a note in the comments. Steve, it's been a pleasure. I'm enjoying working with you, and I know we're going to continue on that. On that note, thank you very much, and we'll see you all next week. Cheers.
No, thanks for having me on, Luke. That's been great. Cheers.
Cheers.